depending on the way you look at it, do you see this as an upgrade to the cornerbacks room, an upgrade to the wide receivers room, a downgrade to the cornerbacks room, a downgrade to the receivers room? What a polarizing move the Pittsburgh Steelers made late Tuesday night and a good Wednesday afternoon to you all. March 13th, 2024. Chris Halicke, Corey Crisan with you on the South Side Beat. Yesterday was all about Patrick Queen, and today, Chris, we get to talk about another really major move the Pittsburgh Steelers made during the legal tampering period as free agency begins in just about 1 hour officially at 4 Eastern today. Diontae Johnson out. Donte Jackson in. The Steelers trade Johnson and a 7th-round pick, the 7th-round pick in this year's draft, for the cornerback Donte Jackson and a 6th-round pick. So now the Steelers will pick twice in the 6th round and once in the 7th round in this upcoming draft. And that's what this is all about today, in addition to what I think is a very important pro day today. But let's talk about the trade first. This is a massive move on many fronts, I think. And let's talk about it first, I think, from the perspective of dealing Diontae Johnson. Your initial thoughts on it, and I'll of course give mine as well.
Yeah, obviously Diontae, I feel for the most part he got a bad rap, and stuff like this, it's questionable at best. Steven says we want volunteers, not hostages, and Diontae didn't want to be here. There's a lot of evidence over the course of recent years that fly right in the face of that mentality. Now, I wasn't there this past season, obviously. So I can't speak to the way things went down last year. And that obviously could change everything. So I'm not going to pretend that I know 100% of the context here, because I don't. But from what I do know, that Diontae embraced roles that made him uncomfortable for the betterment of the team. Guys who are selfish, guys who are hostages and not volunteers don't do that, period. Everybody's worked a job in which you've had a manager where you're like, that dude should not be managing people. They're not a manager. They don't have the personality traits to be a manager. Right. And then I've worked for those guys, and I've worked for guys who are natural leaders, natural people who know how to manage people and to lead people. Diontae is not one of those guys, and yet he embraced that role anyway because he knew who in the heck else is going to do it. And guys who are hostages don't do that. Again, I think I can't speak for what happened this past season, but from what I know about how his teammates felt about him, there wasn't a lot of discourse, or if any discourse, in that locker room amongst his teammates. And I know some people will go back and look at Diontae and Minkah got into it after a game before. Man, tell me if anybody spent any kind of time playing football at any kind of competitive level, whether it be high school, college, or pro, maybe even going down to middle school. Tell me that that you play, of all the time you played, that there was never a fight in the locker room. Right. Like it happens. It's part of the game. It just happened in hockey, earlier today or something like that. There were a couple of Red Wings or something like that had to get separated during practice. It happens. You fight with your own teammates at times.
Sports. Sports.
It's just sports. So that kind of stuff can be taken and ran with, that, Diontae's a bad teammate because he got into it with Minkah. Like, no, man. I don't know, man. Like, it's just, I'm not saying that things didn't go down well at the end of last year. I'm just saying that I think he gets a bad rap for the most part, because I think everybody just thought that he was this bad teammate, this bad guy. But if there was discourse between him and the coaching staff, him and the front office, then I understand. And Jonah John comes with a 499 contribution. And he makes a good point here. He says two things can be true at once. He may have been a great team player, but also wanted out. It's very possible. And then the 1 year left on the contract obviously plays a big role in that too.
Sure does. And that's why I asked Omar Khan at the NFL Combine, Diontae's entering a contract year. Are you engaging with his representatives? And if you go back and listen verbatim to Omar's answer, at the start of it, it sounded like he was going to start to spill the beans that, yeah, we're engaging in that conversation, but then he quickly stopped himself and said, well, we're not going to disclose that, basically.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's true or not, obviously, that's not going to be played out here in Pittsburgh. Diontae is entering a contract year, and it is a pretty steep money. It is a pretty steep amount to keep him. Now, there's a lot of layers to this.
Yeah.
I'm with you on this, Chris, and I was going to make sure to say this today. I had absolutely nothing personal against Diontae. I thought Diontae was a fantastic guy. At heart, I thought he was a good guy. I thought he meant well. I think he tried. I think he gave a damn. And look, I understand. Mike says here the fumble, right? The lack of effort on the fumble in Cincinnati. And now Mike here in our comments thinks that's a final nail in the coffin with Mike Tomlin. I actually disagree with that. I think it was a nail in the coffin for the front office and not Mike Tomlin. He didn't get benched for it. He didn't get benched for it. There was no on-field repercussions, so to speak, with respect to that play in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin, not that he let it pass or anything. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is he didn't get benched, and there was no ramification for that from Mike Tomlin. If anything, I think it pissed off the front office. It pissed off Omar Khan. It pissed off people who had the power to say, all right, we're shipping you to Carolina for a cornerback. Now, we'll get to Donte Jackson, obviously, momentarily, but what this does, and Willie says here, remember when everyone said we never trade Diontae, wonder where they are right now. He's right here. He's speaking right now. I didn't think this would happen. I didn't expect this move to happen. And forget about the idea of extending him. Forget about the idea of extending him for a second. I'm talking about from a sheer need perspective. Like, they had him under contract for this year. You think you're going to bring in, whether it's Russell Wilson, evidently was, or if it's going to be Mason Rudolph coming back, or if they're going to commit to Kenny Pickett or trade for Fields or draft a quarterback, whatever avenue they were going to be a quarterback, my logic suggested to me that they're going to need a wide receiver around for him to throw the ball to. They're going to need somebody that's established, that has the ability to get open for that quarterback to throw the ball to. I thought Diontae was that guy for it. And obviously they thought a different direction, or something happened where they were inclined to deal him. And now here we are, where the Steelers, in basically everybody's opinion, now need to go get a true receiver. They need to spend some high capital, whether that's in this free agency period or a high draft pick, to get a receiver to play opposite George Pickens.
I got something I got to get off my chest real quick. It's hilarious to me that there's always a section of the fan base, and this really is not meant anything personal at all, so please don't take it that way. But there are always people in the fan base that like to go after the media when anybody in the media is wrong about something, and to be like, "You were wrong."
Oh yeah, I know, right?
It's just
it's our fault.
Our fault. Somehow it's either our fault or they just like to point out the fact that you're wrong, or you don't know what you're talking about, or whatever. But whenever, like, for example, I reported, like, okay, when the news broke that the Steelers were meeting with Russell Wilson, the immediate thought was, well, if they're meeting with him, he's going to immediately take over for Kenny. And I got I reached out. I'm like on a pontoon boat in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm on a pontoon boat in Florida. That's funny, Swan. Like, texting sources, and immediately got responses saying any quarterback that is brought in is to compete with Kenny. Yeah. And I started reporting that immediately before they had even met with Russell. And then lo and behold, when the news breaks, and then the following morning, like Monday morning, NFL Network is saying the same exact thing. And I'm like pointing to it, being like, I've been telling you guys since Friday,
right?
That Russell's not coming in, but it's just, you're never going to bat 1,000 on this stuff. The only thing that we want to do as reporters is we're not trying to make our hot takes or whatever, or our predictions be 100% correct, because they're never going to be, because sometimes things change. For example, the whole thing with Russell Wilson, sometimes things change before we even know about it, before we even get information from people. So it's just funny to me. But anyway,
it's not an exact science. Reporting's not an exact science. And by the way, this might shock some people. Teams lie to reporters. There's a there's a responsibility from reporters to vet that information for multiple sources, multiple reasonings. Look, when I was at the combine, I messaged people. I reached out to people. That's not to say they were going to just outwardly tell me the truth on what they were going to do, and they were going to just show me their hand and say, here's exactly who we're looking at here. Here's exactly what's going on. Here's exactly, whether I message agents or whoever it was, like, here's what we're doing. No one's going to do that, because that's quite frankly bad business for them. That happens. That is discourse. That is part of the game of reporting. And look, even the most esteemed reporters that do this, whether it's on a national level or they've covered any team for decades or years or months, whatever it is, they all have that responsibility. But also, like, teams will still lie if they want to. And I'm not saying anybody's lying to you or anything, Chris, but what I'm saying is they're going to tell people what they want to tell people. Yeah. If they're not stupid, they have PR people. Like, they have people, they have agents, they have people that get in their ears and say, hey, wait a minute.
You can see. Wait a minute, CJ. So every single time before Mike Tomlin and we really need to get back on track here. But a quick little peel behind the curtain. Every time a player or even Mike Tomlin or whoever is about to address the media, for example, when Mike Tomlin is walking off the field, you will see either Bert, like the head of Steelers PR, you'll see another member of PR walking with him, or especially with players, you'll see them kind of talk to them before they even go over and address the scrum. Not, they're probably preparing them like, okay, you're going to be asked about this, you're going to be asked about that. There is a science to what PR does, so that coaches and players alike are prepared for anything that the media could ask. Mm-hmm. So yes, that absolutely happens. So,
and by the way, for all those big press conferences on Tuesdays, right? The Tomlin Tuesdays we all talk about, you don't see it on camera, obviously. On camera, you see that shot of Mike Tomlin at the podium, or at the lectern, if you want to be technical. Off camera, flanked on both sides, are one PR agent on either side, representatives of the team. Though. And those guys, they're great people. Do not get me wrong. And those guys walk with Mike Tomlin from wherever the practice field is, or inside the indoor, or the office. Yeah. They walk him over with them. Yeah. And I'm not saying they're coaching him up, so to speak, on what to say, because Mike Tomlin probably doesn't need that in a way.
So
there is a discourse there. Absolutely.
So really quick to go back to, so obviously, Diontae is gone. We can talk about, the impact and everything like that. And, right. But the fact is, let's talk about, okay, now what did the Steelers do? So first off, Donte Jackson at corner. The initial reaction, when you talk about trading away Diontae, I think they should have gotten more. But the only, I know there was a report that the Chiefs had reached out. I know for a fact, I had a couple people inside tell me that the Cardinals also called. So that was another team that was kind of in the running for it. I don't know what the Cardinals were offering, but I just know that they were one of the teams that were talking, or at least called that day yesterday before he got traded. So I sorry, I was just reading that comment right there.
Yeah.
That's fine. The thing is that
part of the territory.
No, when you're in, in the media of any kind, you have to have a thick skin, let stuff roll off your chest. It's fine, or roll off your back, whatever. But no, it's so Donte Jackson. First off, that my immediate bare minimum. He's insanely fast. So they added speed on the outside, and then he is better than what they had. Now that's not a very high bar, but he's still better than what they had. So they upgraded the second corner position. Could they get a better player there? Probably, yeah. But you make do with what you can in a situation. If the Steelers did feel like they had to trade Diontae. Which they moved up in the draft and, again, upgraded a corner. So now the big question is, what do they do at receiver? Because right now it's George Pickens and
not much else.
Nobody.
Not much else.
Nothing against Calvin Austin or anything like that, but
right.
Not exactly proven.
It's worth noting they moved up 62 spots in the draft. That's significant. on some level. That's significant. That's essentially jumping teams twice, if you want to phrase it that way or frame it that way. So they traded a 7th round pick. They moved up 62 spots to pick twice in the 6th round. I don't think they have a 5th rounder because of the Kevin Dotson deal. So now it's 2 6th rounders. So they moved up and they acquired more of that capital. Now let me talk about Donte Jackson for a second. I agree he's fast and everything. The production from last year doesn't excite me. No. Not having an interception, numbers were down generally. Really hasn't had his best season was 2020. Like, he hasn't had that kind of a season since then. So probably 3 years of just average play at best. Mm-hmm. Now, okay, the trade-off of player to player itself, like optically, Carolina got the better player.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But again, the Steelers moved up 62 whole spots in the draft. That's a lot. Yeah. So let's not act like, okay, they just lost a 1-for-1 swap, because let's not forget the pick swap either. So with that being said,
but it also upgrades a position of need too.
It does.
Now the Steelers, for right now, the Steelers don't have to go in and be like, corner is a position we feel like we have to take in the 1st round anymore. Sure. Like, you've got 2 starters on the outside now. Now, do they need to add more to that room? Yeah, absolutely. I think if you go into the season with Corey Trice as your 3rd corner, that's a bad plan. And that's nothing against Corey Trice. That's everything about the fact that he's coming off a major injury and he has yet to even play 1 snap in the preseason at the NFL level, much less regular season.
Yeah.
So they need more, but now you're not as pressed to be like, okay, now that kind of paves the way. Now we can address receiver. Now we can address tackle. Now we can address center, more pressing positions, and made corner not as high of a priority. It's still a position they need to address, but it's not as high of a priority as it was before.
I'd feel more comfortable if Donte Jackson was a rotational piece and not the starting outside corner opposite Joey Porter Jr. I'll put it that way.
And just a really quick note, I am seeing, so right now it's a bit of a wash in terms of the cap. Mm-hmm. Actually, the Steelers gained like $522,000 in salary by doing the trade, because Diontae carries a $5.8 million dead cap with the trade. But the Steelers are likely, according to what I was told by a source, likely to rework Jackson's deal to lower his cap hit. So it should be a trade that ends up saving them some money too.
I think Corey Trice is a good player, but 7th round pick with an injury history coming off a torn ACL, you can't sit here and reliably say he's just going to slide right in and be an impact player. You have to see what he is.
It's just an unproven guy. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm saying you can't rely on Calvin Austin to be not only your number 2 receiver, but maybe even your number 3 receiver. And it's nothing against Calvin Austin. I think he's a dynamic athlete and has definitely flashed some potential, but not nearly proven enough to be like, oh yeah, you can be our number 3, no doubt. Like, no, you need to be a little bit more fortified at the position so that in case injuries happen, then a guy like Calvin Austin can step in and try to, earn more playing time. And that's the way he should be doing it. Again, nothing against Calvin. It's just, he's not proven enough. And that's a guy who's at least now played in NFL games. Corey Trice has played none. Mm-hmm. Like, completely unproven player. And then to your point, also 7th round pick, injury history. Like, you have to have better plans.
7th round pick that had injury history in college. That's why that's why he was a 7th round pick. And then he injured his knee in training camp. All right, a couple quick hits right here. Now, the free agent market for wide receivers obviously going to heat up, at least with respect to the Steelers, because of this move.
On Calvin Ridley, not happening.
Two big names that are out there, Chris Slavin mentions here, Calvin Ridley, Mike Williams. I would say no on Calvin Ridley, but I think a flyer on Mike Williams or checking in on what Mike Williams could gain is worth the while at this stage.
$32 million dead cap from the Chargers?
It's a big price tag. Yeah, it's a huge price tag, but the Chargers had to do it. They had to get cap compliant. They had to do it. So, look, I think getting Mike Williams with his injury history too is a bit of a gamble. Not to pun not intended. Come on, guys. But when I think about the receiver market, I almost feel like the most likely route is the draft, given the connections to Rome Odunze, the Washington receiver who they met with in Indianapolis. Mike Tomlin saw a lot of Ladd McConkey between the Senior Bowl and today at Georgia's Pro Day, which we'll talk about here in a second. He's looked at Roman Wilson pretty heavily dating back to the Senior Bowl. So there's attractive options for the Steelers at wide receiver, especially with that 20th pick and even in the second round. That is in play now. Very, very feasibly in play now if the Steelers don't go out and get a major splash within this free agent market, within wide receivers.
According to Spot Track, Mike Williams is getting it's a dead cap. The Chargers are carrying a dead cap of $12.46 million this year for Mike Williams.
Still steep.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you can probably get him, for any team could probably get him for a cheaper deal. So no, I think that's absolutely something the Steelers need to kick the tires on. One receiver that's really interesting to me, and I think there's a little bit of smoke there, is Tyler Boyd. And not only because he's a Pitt guy, I honestly could not care less about that. It's his style of play. He can play out of the slot. He can block in the running game. And those are all things and it's pretty much a better version of Allen Robinson, a more productive version of Allen Robinson. And that's something that you could have for cheaper. And so I see like some people saying like no on Tyler Boyd. It's just
kind of polarizing.
But listen, if it's for the right price, you're talking about a guy who can again be a productive pass catcher. Doesn't have to be the number one guy. And if you can draft a more dynamic receiver, in either first 3 rounds of the draft, then he can probably even slide down to your number 3 guy, but again, still be a productive pass catcher and block in the running game. Like that's what you're going to need. The Steelers are going to need at least one, if not multiple receivers who can block.
Yes.
Like who can block in the running game. It's just part of Arthur Smith's offense.
Right.
And so that's why I think Tyler Boyd, on a decent contract, in terms of like, you're not having to pay him too much. If it's like 6 or 7, maybe even $8 million a year on like a 2 or 3 year deal, like why not? Like I think that's a pretty good deal for a guy who would fit well in the system.
Yep. All right. Cody asks, do you anticipate a bunch of sightings right on the 4 p.m. Eastern free agent start? Not for the Steelers. And I'm going to loop that question into a discussion point I wanted to bring up today. And that was the Georgia Pro Day. Now, if you paid attention, obviously, if you're listening to the show, you probably have. Over the last 2 drafts, Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and the front office have loved the Georgia guys. George Pickens, Darnell Washington, obviously, Broderick Jones. They've loved the Georgia guys. And I remember the story. And I remember the story that Mike Tomlin told last year when the Steelers drafted Broderick Jones. And he was talking about going to dinner at Pro Day when they selected George Pickens and talking with current Georgia players then. This is 2022. Who's the one guy we're going to be back for in 2023? And the answer that he got was Broderick Jones. Lo and behold, Broderick Jones became a Pittsburgh Steeler. You have to think that conversation, that same question was asked to Broderick Jones and the guys that were in that Georgia class last year. And Georgia this year has a lot of really good NFL talent coming out. Namely, of course, Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle, Lad McConkey at receiver, Cedric Van Pran at center, the safety, the name's escaping my mind right now, Bullock, the safety.
Yeah, Bullard.
Good talent coming out of Georgia, and the Steelers sent the cavalry to scout that pro day today. Yep. Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, Terrell Austin, Arthur Smith, all 4 of them are in Athens, Georgia to watch those top talent guys perform at the pro day. And if history tells us anything, at least in the last 2 drafts, it's that they love that Georgia pipeline. They're winners. They're national champions. They're 5-star recruits. They come through that really good, solid pipeline that develops pro talent well. And look, like, if they drafted Mims in the first round, I wouldn't bat an eye. If they drafted McConkey in the first round, I wouldn't bat an eye. If they drafted Van Pran second or third round, I wouldn't bat an eye. Bullock in the third or something like that, I wouldn't bat an eye, or second. Like, yeah, this is real. This is a legitimate thing. So this is the Steelers, and they're sending the cavalry. They sent the big guns. They sent the heavy artillery to scout this pro day today.
Yep.
God.
I can't help myself. There's your new wide receiver right there.
Oh yeah, there you go. Le'Veon Bell tweets, "I could play whiteout." Great. Imagine that. Imagine that.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, he's gonna push to try to get a spot on this roster. I'm telling you right now.
Man, why not? Why not? He could push.
I'm just waiting for the comments to start exploding.
He could push for it. Wood says I'm not wasting 20 on a center right now. I don't know about that. I don't know if it's a waste. I don't know if you get a guy that is the starting center for the Pittsburgh Steelers for the next 8 years, is that a waste at 20? No.
No,
I really don't think so.
It just depends on who else is there, and that's why I keep. It sounds like a cop out, but that's just why I keep going back to best player available, man. Like if you get to 20, and yeah, let's say Jackson Powers Johnson is still there, but what about Amarius Mims? What about shoot, man, like
Fuaga or Latham, one of the really good tackles, or Fashanu if he falls.
like for whatever reason, I mean, it's just a situation in which you can't just be like, oh, this center fell, slam dunk, no problem. It's just like, especially now with receiver being the need that it is. Like I'm usually not a proponent of the Steelers taking a receiver in the first round because number one, it typically hasn't gone well for them. I mean, there's a couple of good ones, but you have to go back a little bit. Obviously, Plexico Burress and Santonio Holmes. But a lot of the receivers the Steelers have had more success with are more day 2 or early day 3 guys. But with the need that they have at receiver now, even if they sign Tyler Boyd, Mike Williams, or whoever else, even if they sign one of those guys, you still got to add more. It can't just be, let's just say it's Tyler Boyd. It just can't be George Pickens, Tyler Boyd, Calvin Austin, and then that's your top 3. Like that's not good enough.
No.
Not in today's NFL. So and Jeff says here, would it be ridiculous or wrong to go receiver at 20? Not anymore.
Nope.
Not since you traded away Diontae Johnson.
Nope.
Not at all.
But that's the discussion we had about would they or why wouldn't they trade Diontae?
Hines Ward was a 3rd round pick. Really quick.
Yeah. But that's why the discussion that we had about, do you trade Diontae? Would you trade Diontae? Having Diontae Johnson on the roster in 2024 eliminated the need to go get a receiver on day 1 or with the 2nd round pick. Now there is a conversation to be had, not just about free agency and going to pony some money up to get one of these top receivers on the market, but now that conversation about Rome Odunze, who's projected top 10 pick, or Thomas, the LSU kid, or McConkey, or any of these other guys that the Steelers could potentially get at 20, it's all open now. Trading Diontae Johnson opens that door for that to happen. If they kept Diontae Johnson and he was going to be a Steeler in 2024, you could rule that out, and you could comfortably look at tackle or center or cornerback or one of those other positions. But that trade yesterday changed the conversation.
And listen, we're talking about this literally in the wake of trading Diontae. I fully expect the Steelers to not only sign one receiver, but to sign multiple free agent receivers. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to go get Mike Williams and Tyler Boyd. I'm just saying, like, they'll probably sign. I would expect like a more significant signing, like a number 2, number 3 type receiver, and then probably somebody else who can, be a depth guy. So I don't think a receiver at 20 is a bad pick, especially if it's a really, really talented receiver. And for whatever reason, the rest of the draft in the first 19 picks went very, very heavy tackle, and Jackson Powers Johnson's not there. Yeah. If you're talking about a lot of the top tackles are gone, the top center's gone, 20 is a reach for Zach Frazier right now. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if receiver is your best option at 20, then you go there. You go that route. It doesn't have to, you don't have to go into a first round with, it's got to be this position or this position. It's got to be, let's see how the draft falls. We have our big board. We understand, like, okay, if these tackles are all gone, and Powers Johnson's still available, that's our pick. But if this tackle's still available while Powers Johnson's still available, we're going to have to go with that tackle, because at the end of the day, tackles are more valuable than centers. They just are.
Right.
Especially if you consider the possibility that Russell Wilson might be the starting quarterback, because you absolutely need to have an offensive line that can give him time to throw, because he holds onto the ball for a very, very long time.
Yep.
Over 3 seconds on average, every drop back. That's a long time. He's going to need an offensive line that can give him time.
Cody asks, what wide receivers could the Steelers realistically draft at 20? If you look at Pro Football Focus Big Board, there are currently 8 receivers listed in the top 50. And if you cut that number down to the top 30, there are 5 that are listed in the top 30. Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously, Malik Neighbors, Dunze, Brian Thomas out of LSU, Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, who's really shot up boards, Troy Franklin out of Oregon, and then Roman Wilson out of Michigan. Wilson's ranked 49.
Brian Thomas at 20 is a really good pick.
It's realistic. It's now realistic at this stage, but if the smoke coming out of Indianapolis regarding the Steelers meeting Rome Odunze is real, then okay, that's a guy they're going to have to move up for and move.
Oh no, yeah, he's not falling to 20. No, but he's the second best receiver in the class, and that's only because Marvin Harrison Jr. is a freak.
But that's a guy they're going to have to move up for if they really want him.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I don't know if you do that now. Granted, I mean, shoot, the last time they traded up to get a receiver was Antonio Holmes, and he won a Super Bowl MVP. So I mean, that's not a terrible pick.
Sure. I like Mitchell. I like Adonai Mitchell as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's obviously a long way to go. We still have a lot of free agent. I mean, free agency officially begins in 29 minutes. Let's just get Marvin. Listen, I think the plan at receiver now has to be, you have to address it in both free agency and the draft. I really do. Now, I don't think that has to be first round receiver or bust. I would probably even say I would prefer them to just because it's such a deep class that I would prefer the Steelers if they were to address, if part of their plan to address receivers in the draft, I'd prefer day 2. Second round, third round type situation. You probably get more value out of that anyway. While you're able to spend a first round pick on a guy like maybe, for whatever
one of the tackles.
Yeah, one of the tackles, or even a Jackson Powers Johnson, if he's available, depending on how the draft falls.
Right.
I think the Steelers need to fortify the offensive line. I think the first round of the draft is the best place to do that. And then second round, third round, you can get a really good receiver in the second or third round in this class. This is a really, really deep class of receivers. I'm actually really excited. Receivers are one of my favorite positions in football. I love watching film on these guys. It's one of the main reasons why I loved watching film of George Pickens and Diontae Johnson, just because for a guy like me who, like, I played receiver growing up, it was always one of my favorite positions. Some of my favorite players were receivers. When you watch a guy who knows how to get open on virtually every single route, it's fun to watch. I always loved watching Deontay's tape. I always love watching George Pickens' tape. And so if the Steelers end up getting one of these dynamic receivers, that excites me as somebody who gets to watch film on them. Mm-hmm. So, but obviously there's a lot of other things to consider than just, the film is fun to watch.
Yeah. One more quick note before we get out of here. And I think this is the note that a lot of people, most people, many people did not want to have to hear. Source told DK today, Mason Rudolph is expected to sign elsewhere. And the wording that DK used in his report from his source was within 48 hours. So doesn't sound like it's unofficial, obviously, but doesn't sound like Mason Rudolph is going to be back in Pittsburgh. And after they sign Russell Wilson, as we said on Monday, why would he? The opportunity's not here anymore. It just isn't. And he'd have to now compete with Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett. And as B. Phil says, do you blame him? No, not one bit. If I were him, I wouldn't come back either.
Especially because DK reported that, he's got, multiple offers. And I would assume to be most likely a number 2 guy, like a legitimate number 2 guy. And so why not? Like, he's not going to be the number 2 guy in Pittsburgh. I mean, because, even if Russell Wilson prevails and is the starter, they're not moving Kenny down to number 3. And it's the same way. If Kenny somehow does beat out Russell Wilson for the starting job, Russell Wilson ain't going down to number 3. So even though he's making the veteran minimum, but still, whichever quarterback is added next is the number 3 guy. And so, I feel for Mason. You know, like I think that there was at one point a time in which he was going to get a chance to prove himself here. But the thing is that he kind of did prove himself here, because now he set his market to earn a paycheck as a legitimate backup in the NFL, which is a step above what he's been over the past couple of years. So best of luck to him wherever he signs. I hope that he gets not just a good paycheck for it, but obviously, even gets a chance to play. And in today's NFL, it's probably a pretty good chance that he'll get a chance to play.
Yeah. And this was pretty foreseen. And from the moment that Russell Wilson announced that he was going to become a Steeler, and I know a lot of people are saying Mason deserved better and all that, but that's business. Sometimes it's harsh. The NFL is not meant to be for the faint at heart. It really isn't. Sometimes that's business, and
it's the business side of the game, and it sucks.
Ugly.
It sucks a lot and honestly for both teams. I don't think there's anybody on the South side who's just like, oh, we don't like Mason.
Oh, sure.
They wouldn't have come out and said we want Mason Rudolph back the way that they did if they, I just think things changed. I think whenever the Russell Wilson thing became a possibility, not only became a possibility, but became a possibility for the veteran minimum, I think that's whenever things changed, probably.
Yeah. And Jay Smith kind of points the obvious out here, and I agree with him. He played 4 good games in 6 years.
But he did enough in those 4 games.
The right time, but he did it at the right time.
He did enough in those 4 games to go from remember, he was a free agent last year and literally got nothing and went back to Pittsburgh to be a number 3. And in those 4 games, he has now established himself as a guy getting multiple offers to be a legitimate backup elsewhere.
Yeah.
Number 2, unquestioned number 2. That is to do that, to use a 4-game sample size to elevate your status that much. Pretty darn good.
Yeah. CJ says, will Corey come to work tomorrow? Yeah, I will. I've been here all week. Where you been? Been here all week. Listen, 2 weeks ago I was at the combine, and some timing things didn't work out. And I did shows that week, but Omar Khan spoke at 3 p.m. on one of the days. So obviously I can't make it. And I had COVID last week. All last week I was down.
On vacation last week.
And Chris was on vacation. So we took the week and we said, you know what?
Last Friday, I'm on a pontoon boat when the Russell Wilson thing starts going down. And I'm like, oh crap, I guess I got to start. Thankfully I had service where I was. My kids and all of us are like looking for alligators and turtles on the banks and everything like that. And
yeah.
Well, let me text these people.
Spice, hope you're feeling better. I'm thankfully far on the other side of it. Last Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was down for the count. I couldn't be looked at. I was disgusting. And then Thursday, Friday started to come out of it. So Swana says, is it nice to be missed? It is nice to be missed. It's very nice to be missed. I missed you all. Appreciate you all. We love you all. Not sure about DK and Ramon today. I think they're having a show. I haven't heard anything otherwise.
I'm not sure.
But we'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, at 3 Eastern. Here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Remember, you can find us on playback at any time on DK Pittsburgh Sports Steelers on YouTube. Cody says no show today. Well, there you go. Find us on Apple Podcasts, on the Google Play Store. Download the app DK Pittsburgh Sports on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Do not want to miss those. With all this free agent frenzy going on, we are going to be pushing alerts out on that app, especially when things happen to the Steelers.
22 minutes.
So sign up for those for free. We are 22 minutes, as Chris says.
Yep.
Outside of the official start of free agency, although a lot of stuff has been happening over the last few days. So, all right, we're out of here. He's Chris. I'm Corey. We'll talk to you on Thursday. Have a good day, everybody. Cheers.